In the final days of the Heian period, as the Taira and the Minamoto clans clashed for control of Japan, an orphan rose from the mountains of Shinano. He defied his clan, conquered Kyoto, and met a fate as fierce as his ambition. His name was Kiso Yoshinaka, warrior, rebel, and tragic hero. Konnichiwa. Welcome to another journey into the history of Japan. Today, we look at the life of Kiso Yoshinaka, the tragic mountain general of the Genpei War. Yoshinaka's origins are uncertain, but he was reportedly born in 1154 in Musashi Province, modern-day Saitama Prefecture, as the second son of Minamoto no Yoshikata. His childhood name was Koma Omaru, and upon coming of age, changed his name to Minamoto no Yoshinaka, but he's better known as Kiso Yoshinaka, as he was raised in the Kiso Valley in Shinano Province, modern-day Nagano Prefecture. Let's take a look at his family lineage. Yoshinaka was born into the prestigious Seiwa Genji line of the Minamoto clan that traces its lineage to the Emperor Seiwa. Yoshinaka was a cousin of Yoritomo, who would later establish the Kamakura shogunate, and Yoshitsune, Yoritomo's half-brother and military genius. However, leadership struggle erupted between his father Yoshikata and his uncle Yoshitomo over the control of the Kanto region. Their rivalry culminated in the Okura battle in 1155, when Yoshitomo's son Yoshihira in Kamakura launched a surprise attack on Yoshikata's manor in Okura in Musashi Province. Yoshikata was killed in the battle, but Yoshinaka, then 2 years old, narrowly escaped death and was taken in by Nakahara Kaneto, a local warlord in the remote Kiso Valley. The Kiso Valley runs alongside the mountains of Japan's central highland, known as the Roof of Japan. The Yoshihira's victory at Okura resulted in the dominance of Yoshitomo's line that included Yoritomo and Yoshitsune. Although Yoshinaka in Shinano Valley became an orphan, Kaneto raised him with great care. Furthermore, Kaneto's son Imai Kanehira became his milk brother and would serve Yoshinaka throughout his life as the most loyal companion. According to one account, the famous female warrior Tomoe Gozen was also Kaneto's daughter, and grew up with Yoshinaka in Kiso Valley, although there are contradictory accounts about her life. While the Taira clan held sway over the country's politics, Yoshinaka grew up unnoticed in the rugged mountains of Kiso, far from the courtly politics of Kyoto. And that's unlike his cousin and rival Yoritomo, who experienced courtly life in Kyoto in his youth. The differences in their upbringing would have a profound impact on their subsequent lives. Taira no Kiyomori, the head of the Taira clan, became Daijo Daijin, the de facto ruler of Japan, and seized control of the imperial court. Under Kiyomori's dominance, court appointment, wealth, and influence were monopolized by his kin, and he cracked down on anyone who opposed his autocratic rule. Kiyomori even placed the cloistered Emperor Go-Shirakawa, hitherto the most powerful man in the country, under house arrest. This enraged Prince Mochihito, Go-Shirakawa's son, who finally called on the Minamoto warriors to overthrow the Taira in 1180. The prince was soon captured and killed by the Taira forces, but Yoritomo raised an army in Izu where he had been exiled, marking the start of the Genpei War, the battle between the Minamoto and the Taira. And Yoshinaka in Shinano province followed suit. Yoshinaka demonstrated his military brilliance. He fought and defeated the local warlords in Shinano aligned with the Taira. Encouraged by these victories, Yoshinaka advanced into Echigo province to the north. This marked the start of his campaign to conquer the Hokuriku region, the rice-producing center facing the Sea of Japan. But there was a concern: his strained relationship with Yoritomo. Yoritomo was a deeply suspicious man. He knew that his rise to prominence had alarmed Yoritomo, now the clan's de facto leader in Kamakura. But Yoshinaka prioritized overthrowing the Taira over disputes within the Minamoto. Yoshinaka made one decision to avert conflict with Yoritomo. He sent his 11-year-old son Yoshitaka to Kamakura to marry Yoritomo's daughter Ohime, who was 6 years old. Simply put, he offered his son as a hostage to Yoritomo under the pretense of a marriage alliance. This thwarted Yoritomo's suspicion, for the time being at least. But a harsh fate awaited Yoshitaka. We'll reveal that later. As Yoshinaga had emerged as a formidable force in Hokuriku, the Taira in Kyoto decided to dispatch a large expeditionary force to halt Yoshinaka's advance and retake the region. For the Taira, Hokuriku region was vitally important as a rice-producing center, especially when the country was plagued by famine that coincided with the Genpei War. A vast number of people starved to death in the capital of Kyoto. The Taira had to defeat Yoshinaka and take control of Hokuriku at any cost. The Taira's expeditionary army was headed by Taira no Koremori, who was known for his refined tastes, favoring poetry, music, and courtly life over warfare. Despite his gentle disposition, he was entrusted with military duties due to his lineage as the eldest son of Shigemori, Kiyomori's heir. Koremori engaged in a battle at Hiuchi Castle, the stronghold of anti-Taira forces in Echizen province, in April 1183, and secured his first victory in his campaign in Hokuriku. Buoyed by this victory, Koremori's army was advancing to Kaga province. Yoshinaka devised a strategy. Allowing the numerically superior Taira army into the plain in Kaga would inevitably bolster their momentum. He decided to launch a nighttime attack on Koremori at the Kurikara Pass on Mount Tonami, which sits on the border between Kaga and Echizen. Yoshinaka chose the site because Koremori's large army couldn't maneuver efficiently in the mountains, allowing him to compensate for the numerical disadvantage. Furthermore, while the Yoshinaka's forces were accustomed to mountain warfare, the Taira forces, who were raised in the capital, were unfamiliar with rugged mountainous terrain. Yoshinaka, seeing the Taira forces coming up the pass, displayed many banners on the mountain to trick his enemy into believing that his force was larger than it really was. The trick was successful, delaying Koremori's forces at the pass until nightfall. Then, one of the most famous and dramatic moments in samurai warfare occurred at Kurikara Pass. Yoshinaka prepared hundreds of oxen, tying torches to their horns. At nightfall, he launched a surprise attack by driving the flaming oxen down the narrow mountain pass into the Taira camp. The panicked animals caused chaos, and in the confusion, Yoshinaka's forces attacked from multiple directions. The Taira army was devastated, with many soldiers falling to their deaths in the ravines of Kurikara Pass. Koremori barely escaped and fled back to Kyoto. The story of fire ox strategy may be a later invention, but Yoshinaka did defeat Koremori's outnumbering army at Kurikara Pass, marking the beginning of the Taira's downfall. This crushing defeat at Kurikara forced the Taira to abandon the capital, taking Emperor Antoku with them. The path to Kyoto lay open for Yoshinaka. In July 1183, after his stunning victory at Kurikara, Yoshinaka marched into Kyoto as a hero who had driven out the Taira. However, his arrival marked the beginning of a tense and ultimately disastrous relationship with the imperial court, and especially the cloistered Emperor Go-Shirakawa. Yoshinaka's army, composed largely of provincial warriors, lacked discipline. They looted the capital and treated the city like conquered territory, alienating the aristocracy and the commoners alike. The court had hoped Yoshinaka would restore stability after years of Taira misrule and famine. Instead, his inability to manage civil affairs or provide relief disappointed the court nobles, who saw him as a brute rather than a statesman. The most decisive reason, however, was that Yoshinaka attempted to intervene in the succession to the throne. Yoshinaka tried to install a new emperor of his own choice, which caused an irreparable rift between Yoshinaka and Go-Shirakawa. And there was a man in Kamakura who sought to exploit the discord between Yoshinaka and Go-Shirakawa. Minamoto no Yoritomo. Yoritomo's position within the Minamoto clan had weakened because Yoshinaka seized control of Kyoto first. He was waiting for the opportunity to turn the table on Yoshinaka. Yoritomo secretly contacted Go-Shirakawa and offered to procure rice from eastern provinces to resolve the capital's famine if he was authorized to rule these provinces. Having spent his childhood in the capital, Yoritomo knew how to follow the protocol of the nobles. Go-Shirakawa jumped on Yoritomo's offer and gave him the authority, which meant he was authorized to use military force to govern the eastern provinces. And furthermore, under the pretext of delivering rice, Yoritomo could also send his army to Kyoto. While Yoritomo was secretly communicating with Go-Shirakawa, Yoshinaka was fighting in the western province. After fleeing the capital, the Taira had established their base at Yashima on the island of Shikoku. When Yoshinaka attempted to cross the Seto Inland Sea from Mizushima, the Taira intercepted them at sea. Yoshinaka was a mountain man, but was a no seafarer. But the Taira were experts in naval warfare. Yoshinaka suffered a crushing defeat. The victory at Mizushima revived the Taira, and they established a new base in Fukuhara, which was much closer to Kyoto than Yashima. Yoshinaka fled back to Kyoto. Upon returning to Kyoto, Yoshinaka learned that Go-Shirakawa had been in contact with Yoritomo and granted him the authority to rule the eastern provinces. Yoshinaka became mad, for this was nothing but a betrayal and couldn't forgive Go-Shirakawa. He openly accused Go-Shirakawa of secretly allying with Yoritomo. However, with Yoritomo now on his side, Go-Shirakawa took a hard line against Yoshinaka. He denounced Yoshinaka for his failure at Mizushima and ordered him to leave Kyoto and fight the Taira once again. But Yoshinaka found it utterly unacceptable, for if he left Kyoto unguarded, Yoshitsune's forces would inevitably seize the capital. Enraged, Yoshinaka took extreme measures. He laid siege to Hoju-ji Palace, Emperor Go-Shirakawa's residence, and burnt down the building. He didn't kill Go-Shirakawa, but abducted him and placed him under house arrest, like Kiyomori had done 5 years before. His actions backfired. One by one, his generals and soldiers began to defect, because attacking Go-Shirakawa, Japan's highest authority at that time, was considered a heinous crime. Now he was surrounded by enemies. To the west, the Taira was revived in Fukuhara and could attack Kyoto at any time. To the east, Yoshitsune was approaching with massive army from Kamakura. And the capital of Kyoto was filled with hostile court nobles. And finally, Yoshitsune arrived with an army of 60,000. Yoshinaka's troops had dwindled to barely over 1,000 after so many defections amid all the trouble. Yoshitsune deployed his troops along the Uji River in the south and the Seta River in the east, which formed the defensive lines protecting Kyoto. Yoshinaka removed the planks from the bridges over these rivers to prevent Yoshitsune's forces from crossing. It was winter and the rivers had swelled from the snow melt, making it seem impossible to cross them. However, two of the Yoshitsune's retainers dared to charge across the icy Uji River, competing for first entry. Other generals followed, breaking through the Uji River defense line in one decisive thrust. Yoshinaka abandoned the Uji River and joined the Seta River defense forces, headed by Imai Kanehira, his milk brother and royal companion, who were struggling to hold their ground. However, one by one, Yoshinaka's retainers were eliminated, leaving just a few, including Kanehira and Tomoe Gozen, the legendary female warrior who fought on Yoshinaka's side. Yoshinaka begged Tomoe to escape the battlefield. She reluctantly obeyed after decapitating an enemy general. Yoshinaka bravely fought until the end, but was fatally wounded by an arrow that struck him in the face. He closed his turbulent life at the age of 31. And his son Yoshitaka fled Kamakura after learning of his father's death, but was captured and killed by Yoritomo's retainers. He was 12 years old. Raised as an orphan, hailed as a hero, and killed as an outcast. Yoshinaka was a man of contradictions, brave yet reckless, loyal yet defiant, and militarily brilliant, yet politically naive. Though Yoshinaka is overshadowed by Yoshitsune in legend, he endures as another tragic hero of the Genpei War. Thank you for watching. If you found the story of the tragic mountain general compelling, please like, subscribe, and share. ありがとうございました。さようなら。